actually spent more than 30 years in education. And this is the 14th country that he is at. So he's definitely a person we need to listen to and start our day with. So let's put our hands together to welcome Dr. Antony.
Well, good morning. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me here, even though short notice. Thank you for the warm introduction. Today is going to be a little bit of a mixture on what we are facing now in the 207 sovereign nations of the world and the 180 that profess to freedom. Basically, I'm going to look at a quote for the US citizens amongst us here from Benjamin Franklin, and where Roosevelt's concerned on Peabody, because at the inauguration of Roosevelt, he quoted Peabody, who used to be Roosevelt's schoolmaster. And always believe in the great fact to remember, the trend of civilization is forever upward. Are we indeed moving upward as a civilization with the innovative technologies and premises we come across every day? So basically, I'm going to touch upon different things. So we're going to look at IT, business, and the introduction of all of these over the years, and how it's manifested itself today, or themselves today. He wants to go. So over a 13-year period, I've observed both schools, universities, and students and parents alike, and what's their view on what their children should be facing, or to expect from any K-12 to HE in the educational sense. So I had to look at this statement, basically. IT and school innovation can enhance learning and business by attracting students to an institution. That is true. That's a wonderful mantra for business. But it cannot really replace the human mind. So we have to be very, very careful and to use IT, the gadgets, the tablets, within the learning premise today. So the two questions one would ask, they're quite simple actually. Is IT and business, and is it trying to replace the human mind? Or, if so, would it lead to a regression of our civilization? This is what we're going to cover, especially here. So in the 1980s, especially in the United Kingdom and the United States, they got together over the Thatcherites and Reaganist administrations and became the new laissez-faire, the way they wanted to operate business within education. It was so liberal, and it coincided with globalization as we see today and the free market, and which was different from the generation before, unfortunately. Teacher quality has reduced in substance over the last 25 years. Like the introducer just mentioned, I've been in it about 30 years, both in school, primary, secondary, as well as an academic. And then the endangerment of that process. So we're looking at the lack of social integration, which is being noticed today with both students and the parents and who came from the 1980s generation and graduates. And unfortunate Homo sapiens' inability for making vital decisions. And this really does puzzle me greatly. And some parents in private institutions have a dictate over principals for the sake of business and administrators and the ones who are here who know about that kind of thing. It does happen now, more so. All for the sake of a business. But at the end of the day, we have to take civilization forward. The student age criteria I've looked at in the last 13 years have been between 5 and 26 years of age, so even MBA graduates. And it's part of a book I'm writing. This is like the third chapter of the book, which I already presided upon and presented at Harvard Medical School last September. And moving on from there, the sources. The sources basically K-12 and pre-university. And basically what we're looking at is, first of all, the university system, pre-university, the A-levels. Have they become more simplified for the students? Once I came from like the 1970s and 80s, it was very difficult at the time. But I've taken 3 different types of epoch here: 1965, the year after my birth, 82, and 2013, when the last Joint Council qualifications were indeed published. So for the graduates, they're facing a dilemma. And some are facing real issues, especially in the workplace, because some London firms, in fact, require psychometric testing before the first interview, especially in the City of London. And us, Homo sapiens, within the evolutionary scale is at stake now. And we see that with the reduction in skill sets of students and graduates, moreover. If we were to look at advanced level grades, from A to E, this is the pre-university exam you take, which is mandatory in the United Kingdom. I've taken 1965, 1982, and 2013. For some reason, between 1965 to 2013, there's been a huge increase, 98.1% of students passed. These are actually published figures, by the way, from the UK government, the Joint Council for Qualifications. But in 1965 and 1982, you can see it remained constant. So there was a degree of difficulty throughout the examination, and basically the goals were there, the aims were there. But we must question ourselves what happened in 2013. I beg the question, especially the UK members here today, or like yourself, well-versed with the UK educational system. This is why Ivy League universities in the United States are having doubts about the SAT at the moment. This is a connected issue to that. And if we break it down even more into, say, the academic course cycle of events, critical thinking, English, and mathematics, as you can see in the United Kingdom and in Europe, in fact, it's become a B to D nation. There's further elaboration. There's a nice curve there, which exemplifies and exacerbates the dilemma. Now, basically, it's not only a British problem. It's in Europe. It's also the USA. And even in the USA, for example, if we're going to private institutions, only 10% of the American student population is in private education. So what happens to the 90%, the other 90%? We have to think about this. Don't forget the students and alumni, the graduates, are our future. When we're all dead and buried, you'd be hoping in spirituality or from heavens above that children and grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren are doing a good job and keeping us with Peabody's notion of progressing forever upward as a civilization. So all the specialists come to the Middle East. That's why it's been exported and imported into this country in the GCC. We have advisors, specialists who come here. I've been here for 3 years, and I've seen 1 or 2 that are any good. And how can you advise governments in the GCC if you come from failed systems? It doesn't make any sense to me. If we ignore them, as here stated conveniently, we can look at other angles like poverty versus affluence. And if you look at India, they have a lot of poverty, but the Indian system is special because they keep churning out very good graduates. So there's nothing wrong with the system, so we can't use that as a poverty versus affluence angle as well. I know there's new colleges being introduced to India, but the state system, which is the majority, they're still doing very well. The former Eastern Bloc, the Cold War, they were still churning out excellent graduates who could critically think and things like that and make consummate decisions that matter. So if we move on to the lack of self-discipline, this is in the private sector, unfortunately. We're looking, when we were all at school, we were trained, we were taught, and especially when we went into higher education, we were on our own, we had to study our own way, we had to be individualistic, we had to form groups and teams for research committees and things like that. They lack that motivation now. I don't know why. We know that plagiarism exists, widespread from K-12 to HE. I've seen it in abundance. limited homework from some schools, or unlimited or too much homework from other schools. As the parents here just outsource the homework to another student and pass it off as their own child's homework. Social study skills, they've virtually deteriorated, and paying for education guarantees a past mentality has come to fruition, especially with the parents. I'm paying X amount of dirham, X amount of dollars for this college education, I expect results. This is where globalization has got it a little bit wrong. And parents, both parents and students, have become like the consumers and the customers. Now, the evidence also shows that universities weren't the only cause or the main cause here. It came from K1 to K12. And the easiest way to elaborate on this is refer back to the A-level results and how we attend university. How do we get to university? How do our sons and daughters finally get there? For example, we had log tables to do mathematics in my day, and now you can introduce a calculator to a mathematics exam. What the hell is going on? You tell me. What is this technology? We should be using our thinking. There's a difference from thinking to critical thinking. For example, we memorize 15 times 15, 225 at school. That's thinking. It's like a burnt-on chip. But critical thinking is 15 squared, or the square root 225 is 12 times 12. That's critically thinking. That's elaboration. That's breakdown. That's processing. But is it down to simple global modality and globalization? Yes, I can speak about this topic because all of us in HE, higher education, we receive these students or the products from the K-12 system. And so we are the best judges to see year on, year out, new freshmen coming to university as depicted here at Yale. Now let's move on to IT. The gadgetry used now, it may be great for business, or we're high-tech and we use tablets in school, but there's no evidence that it improves the proficiency of students. In fact, it's the opposite. I will elaborate further as the slides progress. IT, in my view, should be like a calculator. It is a tool, a device that aids us in our work, aids us in the preparation, and a form of referencing. That's all. So what's been the effect so far? The effects on the students has been quite astonishing. The lack of cognition from this Google generation, the mental agility has been affected. You ask them what, say, 9 times 8 is, and you may get 3 answers out of 10 correct. And if we walk into the spelling of their native language, we will see that the general knowledge and times tables are affected by the world's geography, topography. You ask them a capital city of a certain country. What about the history, whence they came? And the history of Europe, the history of global Europe, history of the Ottoman Empire. Ask depth questions. We need to understand the world. Is globalization about just business, or to simply educate the students, as it should be, on the world platform and within the domain of the globe? Looking at touchscreens versus eye contact. There's a social paradox here. How many times you walk down the street and you have eye contact? When you look at your students, how much eye contact do they actually give you? It's a social problem now. The most receptive communication device in sociology, psychology, is eye-to-eye contact. Instead, they're looking at a screen. Our learning comes from observation. They say knowledge is power, information is power. That's rubbish. You don't get the knowledge or the information without observing, and that takes vision. So no eye-to-eye contact. How do you understand the person opposite you or adjacent to you effectively, especially in school? If you thought I've been talking nonsense, basically on the 23rd of September last year, I gave a speech at Harvard on this very same subject. And then 2 weeks prior to that dissertation, the OECD the education director, no less, Andreas Schneider. He came up with virtually the same results as I over 13 years. He states, quote, investing heavily in school computers and classroom technology does not improve pupils' performance, end quote. Check you are at the bottom if you don't really believe me. And then further on, he elaborated, if you look at the best performing educational systems, such as East Asia, they have been very cautious, note, very cautious about using technology in their classrooms. Those students who use tablets and computers very often tend to do worse than those who use them moderately. This is why they're top of the league tables. Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore, top in math. Britain, third from bottom. I don't know about the USA. I'll allow US commentators to mention the figures there. Third from bottom in math and science, UK. He touched upon several other ideas, but making sure that all school children have a good grasp on reading and math. This is what I've been saying. All calculators, all Google, all artificial intelligentsia type of models they've used to answer simple processing questions of operation. Here, it said there's going to be a huge gap because they're using high-tech devices. That's an elaboration of what he's saying. He wanted classroom technology, moving on, can be a distraction and a result of pupils cutting and pasting, prefabricated, so we all know about this if we don't, if we're not aware of this now. This is a serious issue here. This is the OECD agreeing with me on the BBC. Yes, September last year. And doing the homework from the internet. So how much of their own minds are they using here? These are the future decision makers. These are the future politicians. These are the future leaders. These are the future military commanders we are talking about, ladies and gentlemen. Or the future advocates in a courtroom. A future doctor who's going to preside in accident emergency, who's got to calculate the weight, the height, the age of the person, mentally, on the fly. No. They go to a calculator, go to the mobile phone, there's a nice little algorithm, calculate, and they return to a ward and the patient's already flatlined. Yeah. We are at threat level status. It may sound harsh, it may sound very military-esque, but we are in humanitarian terms because social instability, continued financial crisis, a gluttonous society, we're all aware of this. Future leaders, where are they going to be spawned from? We are dealing with future leaders here. Then, further global conflict. You're going to have further global conflicts, yes, it's going to get worse than Syria, believe me. Because people don't know how to interact. When man has a border, they protect the border. That is nature. But we've gone beyond borders now, have we noticed politically? Poorly crafted ideas and notions, lack of debating skills. This does help relieve a stress situation between countries. They're going to have poor debating skills. This is why all my students, either at SP Jain or Skyline University, have a project which they have to do themselves, hard-copied, and then presented for the second phase. They always present it, and then we have a discussion. That is mandatory in my lectures and in my classes throughout the year or semester. And demise, job satisfaction, has been encountered, reduced sense of self-worth, a feeling of demotivation and demoralization with your peers. The peers have got to motivate us, surely. Our peers must stimulate us. This is from the students. This is from who we teach now. Now, we've got to look at basically where we're going to go on the evolutionary scale. I've whittled it down to four. No discipline control, reduced skills of social interaction, solely reliant on the touchscreen, and poorly crafted decisions. This is what we're encountering today. So, you may find this funny. Well, let's have a look, shall we? How are we going to do on the evolutionary scale? should have done. We shouldn't be where we are if we don't know this. Cro-Magnon man here, the cited version in the center, was the first in our evolution to possess critical thinking skills. Clothe each other, even camouflage to hunt, to get closer to the beasts for the kill. Simple as that. And the advent of fire, cooking. So let's have a look. This is the man of today, 2060, okay? Common era. Not BC, I've gone for the modernity here, okay? 2050, we are going backward. This is where we're solely dependent on technology. We are not thinking for ourselves, ladies and gentlemen. More so, our children and children's children. Is it a business, or are we affecting our civilization here? Now, artificial intelligence. Do we become it? Do we immerse within it? Do we integrate within it? I'm afraid if it's all dependent on AI, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking 200 years' time to use the same amount of brain power in decision making as Cro-Magnon man did 60,000 years ago. I'm not the only one. You remember Stephen Hawking's remarks? Computer dependency, this is what we're referring to here. Humans, quote, who are not limited by slow biological evolution, couldn't compete and would be superseded, end quote. How do we overcome? Yes, what is the practicalities? How do we solve or resolve this riddle? Legislation, IT, to be only used as tools for referencing and for processing. Business people must not be in overall control where academic decisions are concerned. There must be a shared mandate in an institution. At the moment, 85% of business controls an institution. Very much is left. We are nodding dogs, basically, to business. I would like a nice meeting of minds here. Without good quality educators, you won't have very good alumni. Alumni is part of the process that establishes an institution, a good institution. Yes. And if we look at K-12, K-12 legislation be adopted by 2020 at least. Or we're going to take to 2050 to see the remnants, to see if a reversal is taken place where decision-making and discipline is returned to K-12 education and not dominated by politics and globalization. It will take a generation or more to resolve, maybe longer. But basically, responsibilities I'm going to isolate now. Teachers must be responsible for their own actions as well as their own failings and repair them. Every time I leave my lecture auditoria, I say to myself, well, that didn't go so well. It was a little bit too fast. Wasn't the right timing for certain introduction of some subjects or prefaces or whatever. So I'm trying to be self-aware and self-evaluating. We must be self-evaluating within our performance as educators. Okay, we can go for the old model, the Victorian model, where we just stay here and preach. But we have 21st century students. Yes, we need a 21st century approach, yes. University inspections, oh. Audits. How about this for an idea? Especially with the government. Schools must be regularly audited for the quality of education versus value for money ratio if being private. Do they get value for money? They have to be trained. Governments need to be trained. University inspections must only be conducted by seasoned academics and a knowledge of higher education, especially in management. Not by a former senior lecturer, by a dean or chairperson, someone who's orchestrated that. So let's look at the inspectors. Let's look at the people who advise the Middle East, advise the rest of the world on Western practices which have failed. Yes, they failed. Yes. Failed systems that come from, they advise the UAE government. They also advise the Saudis, the Qataris, and they all have it documented. And I've met them. There may be one or two that are exceedingly very good. I know the K-12 system does pretty well. But in higher education, when we're expected, paperwork, completely unnecessary. Our job is take students from here and take them there and graduate. That's it. And become a part of society. To take our civilization forward, to take our respective nations forward to modernity. Learning outcomes, what are these? What is a learning outcome, ladies and gentlemen? You tell me. What's a learning outcome? We have several grades or criteria where we can make the student better and perform adequately or more than enough. Well, let's look at this, shall we? 7.4 billion in the world population cited by the World Bank. 207 sovereign nations, 193 UN member countries, yes, member states, 21 independent states, 4,200 religions, being faith or belief-led, 50 Muslim countries, correct me if I'm wrong, 50 Muslim countries, that's 50 different cultures. 6,500 spoken languages, 8,000 cultures, give or take your referencing and your sources, and 200 nationalities within the UAE. Oh yes, we're going to have a learning outcome that fits the UAE. We're going to have a learning outcome to fit Great Britain. Multiculturalism? We need a multicultural type of learning outcome. One size doesn't fit all. How many variables are we looking at? 3.5 billion variables if you put it all together in an algorithm, and then you come up with a state-by-state learning outcomes. That's why Bloom's taxonomy hasn't worked and never will work in the GCC, because it was designed for a specific body of people within one nation. It's all accurate. They show me a Bloom's taxonomy sometimes where I work, and I'll say I'm off by a ratio of 35%. I'm not surprised. I'm dealing with 22 nationalities in my class. That's just an example, again. So tell me, ladies and gentlemen, what is the problem and are they working? Look at this, to consider. That's without the subgroups or the subcultures. The professors, us, ladies and gentlemen, we must have a bridge, a connection with business, and business must realize this. You don't have a business without the students. You won't have a continued business. Continued business is very good business, yes. But if they get a reputation that your alumni are of poor quality, cannot debate very well, cannot do certain functionalities in their head, don't even know a capital city of, say, South Africa or Germany, they'd be saying, oh, Bonn now, instead of Berlin. Oh, they Google everything. So basically, we need a bipartisan school as well as HE system where business does not dictate to us academics. We've worked too hard to gain our own respect and respect from others and from our students. We worked so hard to get where we are, publication after publication, book after book, citation after citation. And a businessman who comes in and runs a school, or takes over a school, has no idea about academics. He just wants to make money. Oh, bring in tablets, bring in technology. And it's proven, even the OECD saying, it's not working. It's not a very good idea. So my premise, and my contestant here, ladies and gentlemen, we use IT for tools, for application. That is all. Not to replace the mind. Governments need to be more responsible for educational funding and to whom allocate to lead private sector schools and institutions, therefore. Shirking responsibilities within education and outsourcing to the private sector, which does happen. I wrote this, by the way, because this has been in my body for 10 years. The private sector has been proven to be an unaffordable policy for the masses and devolution for student development in the face of a spreadsheet's profitability. IT alone is not the remedy or panacea. Being reminded that the faults of decisions of a historical past and their unfortunate applications had manifested into conflict, subsequently destroying nations, which are still being destroyed, by the way. Surely, it is what we could do as a civilization that would, and indeed, define us as an intelligent species. So, neoliberalism, laissez-faire, if we go back 350 years, it means all the same, has made one mistake in the selling of education. Do you know what I say? With education, it's quite simple. We must not resign ourselves to the fact that what is happening is very serious at the moment. We are talking about, okay, for us it's fine. What about our children and children's children? Our future, the world order, the decisions that need to be made, modifications that need to be adjusted within society. Who's going to apply these? The same said students who are lacking certain proficiency levels? Future generals? Future prime ministers? So you know what I say? It is not that institutions should be selling education to the parents and students alike, but to sell what the students can do with that knowledge for themselves in the end. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much, Dr. Antony. And that was indeed a session on bringing back the value to education. And I can see more and more people coming in, and the next session is lined up. And we're a little above the time limit. I would request everyone to try and be within the time limit so that we can accommodate everyone and all the questions and discussions. All right, moving on to the next one. Before I move on, I would request Dr. Antony to join us back on the stage for a moment. All right. And I request the CEO of ELET, Dr. Ravi Gupta, to present a memento, a token of appreciation from our team while we prepare for the next session.
Thank you very much.
A big round of applause, Dr. Antony Miller, Skyline University.
No, you shouldn't be scared of them. It's to apply.